Okay, we are recording. I'm Hannah O'Shields, Grace Walker, and we are reviewing our motivational interviewing simulation for the second time due to technical issues. So we're being adaptable and patient, which is important skills. So I'll start off by answering the first question about you, and then if you want to answer about me, we did attempt to play the clips live so that you could get the examples, but instead I will just summarize the positive feedback. So the main skills that I noticed, one was that you kept a really supportive mode during the interview. There was no point in which your face or any of your facial expressions seemed to be uninterested or bored. I know that she had a section about a third of the way through where she goes on a several-minute monologue without taking a breath, and you were able to remain engaged there. I also liked how in that first section, whenever you went over the confidentiality, that you didn't make it seem that she was in trouble, and that I think paved a way for a more positive, collaborative experience. You made it seem like this was something for her rather than a punishment, and I think that makes a big difference. So, and I know that she did mention that you were using a couple of closed-ended questions in her feedback to you. I did not see any of that. I saw several open-ended questions, lots of summarization. So those were good. And I think that she didn't seem to be uncomfortable talking to you at any point. So that was good.
Thank you. Thank you for your feedback.
You're welcome.
I just thought you did a phenomenal job. I really did. We'll cover the introduction here in just a second. I know you kind of had to start over, but that was a minor blip. And then the rest of it, you wouldn't have even known that happened. You were very skilled, I thought, in your ability to summarize, and also not just simple reflections, but complex reflections. There were a couple times where I noticed how you added to your reflection prompted more from her. I wish I could play, this is where I wish I could play the clip so I could show you exactly what parts I'm talking about. Let's see if I can remember. I'm gonna check my comments because I did some quotes and my picture may disappear, but if I can read these quotes that I wrote, then I can tell you exactly.
So I just want to.
Ooh, did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, well, that's your video.
Interesting.
I just sort of reflection complex. We're at I'm going to minute.
But the pain still hasn't gone away.
Minute 4 here is where I first annotated a complex reflection.
We work in a small office. There's just 3 of us in the office, my boss, me, another worker, and
you got caught without a prescription, so I'm sure that must be a bit frustrating for you.
Right there, you said you inferred frustration, which she didn't explicitly say she was frustrated, so a simple reflection would have just reflected exactly what you said, but you inferred an emotion, which, from what I've read about motivational interviewing, is a key part of motivational interviewing. And what I noticed afterwards is that she opened up more immediately, like she latched on to that and she said, yes, it was, it's a small office. It was an embarrassing, and she opened up more about what that experience was like that I don't necessarily think a simple reflection would have done. I'm kind of skipping questions here. I'm just supposed to be talking about the attending skills.
That's okay. I think as long as we get everything, we're good.
Okay. So I'll go into more detail about those when we get to that one, but other skills that I thought you did really well were your active listening, you were positive in your affect towards her. She seemed open to talking to you as well. I didn't think you came across as judgmental or that she was there for a punitive purpose. So yeah, she seemed comfortable, and it's hard for me to not answer some of these other questions. So
I
we'll
know
just go-
it is. That's what I know. I think we've answered a couple of them in there.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so we can talk about the open and closed questions, I guess. Which you asked some great open-ended questions. I didn't catch any closed-ended questions that you asked. You asked an open-ended question about.
But I also, after I got over that, I realized that HR has to do the same thing to everybody. They have to treat everybody the same. And furthermore,
Where's the
until
question?
this was brought to my attention,
Okay, marked open-ended question. Now, what was the question? I'm sorry.
that's okay. It sounds like it's working though. So maybe I just had mine down too quiet, and I'll be able to play a couple of your clips as well.
Okay, I'm like, yeah, I know I can play yours, and it might be a difference in our computers, but let me see. 1323 is where
but I also, after I got over.
Is there anything that you're nervous about in starting physical therapy?
there it is. I mean, I know you phrased it, is there anything you're nervous about, which technically, but I think I did the same thing. And I think there's a difference in a true closed-ended question that doesn't prompt any more response versus your question, which was really, it was, tell me about your thoughts and feelings about starting physical therapy. And so I thought that was really good. It was natural. The way you said it was natural in the conversation. I didn't think it came across as a closed-ended question. So I definitely categorize that as an open-ended question. And then there was another open-ended question about and this goes back to the attending skills, but it was towards the end, and you asked about her calling the physical therapist, if she could call the physical therapist between your next session. That was really positive, really awesome. I thought, I'm just going to speak candidly, that you added on that planning aspect. It prompted further action rather than just, but not in a pushy way, not like this is a checklist kind of way. So I was really intrigued by how you incorporated that into your conversation. So
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I really wanted to, I didn't know if it would be graded on whether or not we had a SMART goal in there. Because I know we had read the book about motivation interviewing, and then we watched a few videos. So I wasn't sure if that was going to be needed in there, so I'm like, want to be sure to check that off. So
Well, okay, well, it was great. I thought it was really natural and it fit with, it fit with the conversation. So
let's see if I can bring up any of your, if it will work, open-ended questions. Let's see. Can you hear that?
it's really quiet.
Let's see if I
I
can pull
can't
it all the
really
way
hear
up.
it on my end.
Okay.
Yeah, it just sounds like mumbling. That's interesting.
So this one you directly asked for like her intrinsic motivations, and you did it in a way that was open-ended, and you didn't say a yes or no question. You just said, can you tell me other reasons that you might want to look for other options? And that led her into talking about wanting to start a family. It talked her, into some stuff that her sister had brought up. It made her feel more open up, and just really, I guess, answer to herself why it mattered to her. So that was good. And then so I just, in that area, you kind of emphasized autonomy, and that, her sister is an action person, and that, it's really up to her whether or not she's ready to take these next steps. So I thought that was good, and emphasizing autonomy, which is a part of motivational interviewing. And then one of the open-ended question that really, I think that's the one that opened the very long box of worms. I don't think that's how it was phrased, long box of worms. But when you just said, tell me about your use of prescription drugs, and then she just did a monologue. So it definitely gave her enough to talk about. So.
Well, I'm glad it is helpful to hear your feedback about how I responded to that. I remember at the time thinking she somewhat solved her own, like kind of presented the solution immediately.
Yeah.
And I was wondering how I was going to turn that into an actual interview setting instead of, it was great. I can't really remember, but at the time it felt like, I guess it's nice to hear the positive feedback about how I responded, because I remember at the time thinking, this is a really long answer. And I feel like she came full circle within that whole time. Like I just sat here and she kind of did it herself. So
Yeah, and you did a really good complex reflection after that. And it took you a minute to come up with to say that, you didn't just immediately jump in, but I think that's shows that you're actually listening, that you're not just like ready with an answer immediately. Like if you're actually listening, then you might jump in with your own thoughts before even fully listening. So I thought, even though it took you a second, I think that's how it should be. So
okay.
if you're listening, so
Yeah.
And I didn't even think to ask about her husband's, and if that would be a temptation. So that was an interesting catch as well.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was going to be a faux pas, if I should not have done that, but I guess that's what we're doing here is taking risks and then thinking about it afterwards, so that the fact that you found it beneficial towards the conversation is helpful to hear as well. I think with a lot of your, where you really shined, like I said earlier, was in your reflections that transitioned into the open-ended questions that we talked about. And that's kind of this next question, are what are some simple and complex reflections? And I can go exactly to, I have some simple, well, first I also noted here that I really enjoyed that you asked her preferred name and pronouns when you started. I think that immediately set an open and comfortable tone that whoever she is, you have a desire to know who that is, and she's accepted right there, right off the bat. So I did want to comment on that. So I liked that. And then your first simple reflection of her, this is at 4 minutes. Hello. Oh. Uh-oh. Well, now my computer's not cooperating with me. So I annotated a simple reflection at minute 4. And then most of your reflections I really felt like were complex reflections. And I noticed that as either complex reflections or a summarization, which I thought was a good thing. Not just, I mean, there is definitely a place for simple reflections, and I thought yours was well placed. It was at the beginning, the introduction of the interview. She's first stating her reaction to what happened at work and getting caught with the drugs in her system, and then you stated it clearly and accurately back to her, and then she kept talking, and then the thing that comes next was that complex reflection about kind of inferring more about what deeper emotions were taking place or have taken place through this experience. So yeah, there was a simple reflection at minute 4, and then complex reflection at minute 4, 37 seconds, minute 11, 21 seconds. There were more that I didn't annotate too, because I kind of thought we might play this, but then, so I apologize about that.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Yes, I thought you did a standout summary at minute 7 and 52 seconds. And I'm saying the minutes so that if Professor Coffin wants to go and look at exactly what it is I'm referring to, she can, and also you as well. And that was right when her dog needed to be let out. And so let me see if I can play it, because now my learning space is not working. So that's not gonna, technological difficulties.
Hey, I'm
There you are.
Great. Sit down. I wasn't. Yeah. So
it sounds like it's pretty embarrassing for you to have this happen in such a small office, and While at first maybe you thought, they're just doing this because it's protocol, there's really not a problem. After talking to your sister, you realize this has been going on quite a bit longer than you realized, and you actually lost a little bit of time in that.
Yeah. Okay, so that was awesome. Because she had talked about, and it was maybe that talking about how she's never been a problem at work. She's a loyal employee. She's worked for 10 years, but then in a separate part of the conversation, she was reflecting with her sister about how long she'd been using the prescription drugs, as if that was, she hadn't realized how habitual it had become. And you linked those two things together. And I was really looking forward to see how she responded, but then her dog needed to be let out. And when she came back, she was kind of on the same page, but then did go off on a little bit of a different subject. So, but I wanted to comment on that because I thought that was headed in a really good direction. And I was like, oh, bummer.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I do have a whole bunch of little annotations as well, but I did not write down quotes because I also thought we would get to play the clips. And so I don't know how long we've been recording because it does not show me.
Yeah,
I don't want,
but
so let me see if there's anything that we are missing that we haven't covered at all first.
yeah.
I guess one area of improvement and encouraging takeaway, those are the only things we haven't gone over specifically, but I did annotate about, I think, 8 to 10 complex reflections and about 1 or 2 simple reflections throughout the video. And I think the simple reflections were good because it didn't interrupt her, but it showed her that you were listening. So I'll need to work on ways to do more simple reflections so that it doesn't interrupt the flow.
In your video, I do not think your complex reflections interrupted the flow. I don't think you were adding anything. So I want to make that clear. I really view it as a strength. I thought it didn't add too much. Like, you weren't adding to what she was saying too much. It was just really subtle at the end. And her reaction is what told me that you weren't off base in reflecting the way you were reflecting, because it carried on really naturally afterwards. So when I say complex reflection, I really am meaning it as a strength. So I just want you to know that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The only area for improvement, and I think it was worse for me than for you, was just, you can kind of sort of tell nervousness, and it's really, really, really hard not to say, I don't know how to fix that. But that was really the only thing. And then I didn't know in the beginning, when I tried to replay it, I didn't hear you say anything about the limitations to confidentiality, and you might have, but for whatever reason, I wasn't able to hear that, like hurting it.
Nope, it's because I didn't. I wasn't sure how in depth we needed to go with that, so I did just leave it out. But that was something, yeah, you caught that. I didn't go into limitations of confidentiality.
That's really all. So I think the rest of it were strengths, and I think that it seemed like you were ready to be there for her to offer the support ongoing that she was needing. So I think that was good.
Well, I appreciate your really encouraging feedback. I was definitely more critical about it in my head, but it's good to hear things through a positive perspective. And I also, when I got to this question on this feedback form, I was just like, dang, Hannah, you made this really hard for me because I don't know what skill. I even looked through the through the book again to try to, I was like, is there something that I can, something constructive? Because I don't want to just say, oh, you did a fantastic job. And then you're like, thanks, but I want to know more. But you really did a great job. And I think this is something that comes pretty naturally to you. So the one thing that I thought to comment on was just that the introduction where you forgot to do the confidentiality. So you got started and then had to double back. And I noticed, so the first time that you asked her to open up about the incident at work, you phrased it in a really simple way, but I thought the next time you rephrased it, you said, I wrote the quote in here, you changed the verbiage to tell me your understanding of what happened. And I thought that was awesome. So if you go back and you watch and you look to see what you changed it from, I would say that would be my only thing, to go take note of that. Because the second time you did it, I thought it led, I don't know how she would have answered the first time, but the second time it was warm, it was open, and so I did notice that shift, which these can be really awkward to start and be recorded, and so I'm not even, it's not necessarily even a commenting on your motivational interviewing skills, but that was like the one thing that I think I could at least latch onto, and because otherwise it was really good.
Thank you. Yours was as well, and I'm sure that your work in a shelter and stuff has been beneficial to help you gain some natural skills. So
Well,
thank you.
I wanted to, my biggest encouraging takeaway is that when I was done, I wanted to listen to it again because I wanted to learn more from you.
Oh, thank you.
Like, I want to listen to how she responded again, really kind of file that away. So
one thing I noted about yours was that you used a lot of really good descriptive vocabulary of emotions and coping skills that I think are a lot more accurate and show that you really truly get where she was at. And that was something that I thought was a good takeaway. Like really a lot of perception as well towards her emotions. And you didn't just use simple things like that's good or that's bad. You used more complex things. And unfortunately, it won't play whenever I